When taking a look at this movie from a 2024 perspective, what really stands out is what a huge franchise has since then resulted out of this movie. Since the release in 2010, there have been 2 sequels, each one also being a big success, not just financially, but also with critics. Several series have launched, with most of them also having multiple seasons. There are short films, even video games, huge amounts of merch, and it all started with this movie. Let's think about it. What does it take to build a franchise? The most important element of starting a franchise is, of course, to create a great movie. Okay, I think we got it. We figured it out. Jokes aside, while being true, just saying you need a great movie is far too general. There are so many elements that contribute to a movie being great. In this video, I want to focus on the 2 elements that not only contribute to a movie being great, but are also the most important elements for creating a franchise. So let's embark on a nostalgic journey and analyze how this movie absolutely nailed these 2 elements. The art of world building is a true challenge to master for every filmmaker. It's about creating a world that we, the audience, know enough about to understand the story of the movie, then adding in some extra information to make the world feel immersive, but at the same time, not overwhelming or boring the audience with too much information. It's about establishing a world that feels like it exists beyond the story of the current movie. In other movies, it often feels like the world just started to exist when the movie started, which doesn't create a realistic feeling and neglects some of the mystery that is created when the world and characters exist beyond the movie.
Night Fury. Speed unknown. Size unknown.
In this movie, the filmmakers Dean Deblois and Chris Sanders do an amazing job at this. The movie uses its first minutes to establish a Viking village with its own traditions, clothing, architecture, and of course, dragons.
Reload! I'll take care of this.
The Vikings didn't just discover dragons. The war between Vikings and dragons didn't just break out. This is just another day in this Viking world.
Like our charming Viking demeanor wouldn't do that.
Morning!
The world feels lived in. The establishing shots create the feeling that the war between Vikings and dragons has been going on for centuries. Actually, slaying dragons seems to almost be like a sport for them. Your societal value almost seems to be dependent on the amount of dragons you killed and which dragon. Societal norms being formed around the slaying of dragons creates the feeling that this war has been going on for ages.
A natterhead is sure to get me at least noticed. Exotic. 2 heads, twice the status.
The way this movie establishes dragons themselves is also great. There isn't just one type of dragon. The film introduces a variety of dragon species, each with unique designs, abilities, and personalities. This creates a rich ecosystem within the world. Some of the dragons we see a lot throughout the movie, and others are never shown.
The Skrill. Bone Napper. Whispering Death.
Of course, there is the whole concept of Chekhov's gun, which states that you shouldn't set something up that doesn't get paid off later. An example for that within this movie is the setup that dragons aren't fireproof from the inside.
Not so fireproof on the inside, are you?
Which is then paid off in the final battle on a bigger scale. Not using the concept of Chekhov's gun, or using it wrong, can be extremely unsatisfying for the audience. If they wouldn't have used that information later in the movie, it would be like, in retrospect, why did they show us that? Or even worse, imagine that they didn't set that up earlier, but then use it as a method to defeat the final dragon. It would make the ending feel so much more cheap and unsatisfying. As a filmmaker trying to set up a world or maybe even a franchise, sometimes they only decide to make a franchise after the first movie was a surprise success. You always have to find that delicate balance between setting something up for later in the movie, but still dropping enough hints and clues on elements that create a realistic feeling world that aren't directly relevant for the movie itself. That gives future movies the ability to pick up on these elements and create a new movie and a new story around that. That's why the movie just drops subtle hints on the fact that other dragons are out there, but makes sure that the dragons relevant for the current movie are basically always the same 4, besides maybe some unique ones like the Night Fury and the end boss. True to the concept of Chekhov's gun, these 4 types also get way more time to be established than some of the other dragons by having a short training session for each one. By doing so, in my opinion, this movie gets the balance between focusing on the story currently being told, yet still establishing elements outside of the current story just right. A immersive world means nothing if it isn't filled with characters we care about. There are many great characters in this movie, and what takes it to the next level are great character dynamics. We have the father-son dynamic between Hiccup, the most untraditional Viking, and Stoic the Vast, the most traditional Viking and chief of the village. We have Astrid, the popular, good-looking, and badass teenager who forms a relationship with Hiccup, the most unpopular teenager in the village. All of these dynamics are great, but let's be honest, the foundation for this movie and the entire franchise is the friendship between Hiccup and Toothless. It's a friendship between 2 individuals that everybody else in the world would have never thought is possible, both outcasts in their own species. Hiccup not being the traditional Viking, and Toothless being the supposedly last Night Fury, never killing anybody and never stealing food. What makes these 2 characters so endearing to the audience is that they are outcasts not because they are a bad person or a bad dragon, but simply because they are different.
Barmaid, I'm afraid you brought me the wrong offspring. I ordered an extra large boy with beefy arms.
Hiccup, while not being a traditional Viking, has several other qualities that his fellow Vikings just don't see or appreciate. He's clever, merciful, and a great engineer. In addition, he is also honorable by staying true to his values even though everybody is telling him to change.
You need to stop all this.
But you just pointed to all of me.
Yes, at the beginning he also tries to become a dragon slayer, but he tackles that challenge in his own unique way by engineering machines to capture dragons. And as we all know, those machines led to him capturing Toothless, and then he decided that he couldn't kill a dragon. And the dynamic that then started between these 2 is simply inspirational and heartwarming. They both learn from each other and allow each other to grow as characters. Hiccup learning that dragons aren't necessarily evil, and that befriending them instead of fighting them is actually the better approach, at least most of the time. At the same time, Toothless learns that humans aren't always evil, and together they help each other to overcome challenges and show the Vikings and the dragons a better path leading by example.
This is Berk.
And although the character arc in this movie feels complete and fulfilling, the movie still leaves the characters and their friendship room for more growth at the end of the first movie, which can then be explored in future movies. Like the challenging question if it's really the best if dragons and humans live together, or Toothless wanting to create family and Hiccup needing to become the chief of the village. All these themes can then be explored in future movies.
Dragons.
As I said at the beginning, these are the most important aspects for a great movie that can create a franchise. But franchise aside, this movie nails so many other elements of a great movie. The score, the visuals, the themes. Man, this movie is great. I actually used to play the piano, and this score... it's one of the first pieces I learned. In this video I really tried to put my love for this movie into words, and I hope I could get that across to make you appreciate this movie, hopefully even more. Because this movie will always have a special place in my heart. If you enjoyed this nostalgic revisit of an old classic, check out this video about watching WALL-E 16 years later. Otherwise, let me know what you think about How to Train Your Dragon. Is it also one of your favorite movies? And I'll see you in the next one.